it was during that time period, around 86 through about 91, two books were written that actually described your father a certain way. One was a book that Imelda Marcos hated, The Steel Butterfly by Catherine Ellison, and the other one was by a New York Times journalist, this is Stanley Carnot, In Our Image.
All right.
And in these two books, including in Ray Bonner's book, your father is described as a man who follows orders, who was faithfully loyal to Ferdinand Marcos, but not, and I'll paraphrase them, not smart enough to have done things on his own. How would you react to these?
Well, he's partly correct. My father will not initiate things without the clearance of his boss.
So why do you...
Not,
Go ahead.
Being smart enough, hey, you can tell that to my father. But I know for a fact that he also entered the UP. He was at the law school there.
Yes.
He was with the Vanguard. He went on after the war. The war interrupted that, and then he went on to finish his law degree, not from UP because there was no night classes. Had to take it from FAU, and he finished law. I don't know how smart he should be, but a military man he is.
Yes,
He is true
but
and let me make a point. Yeah.
Go, please.
He is the only person until now who started as from the lowest rank, the back private. He went on to become sergeant and all until he became 4-star general. So you don't get that without some smarts.
Well, I think don't take it in this context. Raymond Bonner wrote in Waltzing with a Dictator, he was looking for the culprits.
Okay.
So who could have done this? And what I remembered he wrote about your father was something about his fault would have been to be loyal to an extreme.
Okay. And therefore he was under orders by somebody else. It seems like. Right.
So, given that, the versions of history that are out there that have now pushed you to come out and tell this fascinating story, your point. The versions
my
now,
version?
Well, I'm sorry to say it that way, right?
Yeah,
but,
okay.
But
well, it's not my version. This
it's
is what
your truth.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, I don't know the truth. I don't know who masterminded it, if there was a mastermind. What I think might have happened is, while we like to think there is a mastermind, we like to think there's a big honcho there that orchestrated all of this.
Right.
I'd like to think that there was only really from below, and that they did it on their own because they wanted to get rid of the thorn to Marcos. Those are loyal officers. They are actually maybe colonels only. They are from there, and there was no one big honcho who wanted to become president and wanted to eliminate Ninoy, who was the threat to Marcos. And it's hard to accept that it's right just there. I mean, hey, Senator Aquino is the one assassinated. It's the same thing that the U.S., the American people cannot seem to accept at first that only one person, Oswald, killed President Kennedy. So what I'm trying to say is, it could happen that an assassination can take place from just one person, from maybe just 2 persons, from 3 persons,
I guess,
but without a big name person.
Galman was there.
Rolando
Galman was there. They needed to get through security. Somebody rolled him out of the van.
Correct.
I guess this does smack of conspiracy, and I hate being a conspiracy theorist.
There could be maybe 4 or 5 people.
But you're saying it didn't necessarily have to
it
go all
doesn't
the way
necessarily
up.
mean that there was higher than from these people. Looks like there's colonels involved there. There's one general involved there, and there may be 2 more soldiers.
What do you make of some of the theories say Imelda Marcos was behind it because she wouldn't have calculated the impact?
Well, I don't think she has the men to
carry it out.
To carry it out.
Fascinating.
No.
Lessons.
And of course,
go ahead, Irwin.
I will add to that.
Please.
Yes, and of course they will say, okay, General Ver, because he was too close. My father, like I said, will not carry out something like that something as terrible as like something so significant as that, without, I'm sure, without the president orders. He will not. And like I said too, he knows too well that if you eliminate Senator Aquino, it will be the fall, or it will be devastating to the Marcos administration. And let me add to that, now that I seem to recollect. On 2 occasions, I drove for my father when Senator Aquino was incarcerated or imprisoned in Bonifacio. 2 o'clock at night, I drove for him, and there were the 2 of us, and said, let's go to Bonifacio. I didn't know then that he was going to talk to Ninoy. My father was going to talk to Ninoy. It turned out, then I realized that he was always the go-between between the president. And then I realized that there is a sort of a relationship between the president and Senator Aquino. And it's one out of respect for each other.
Correct.
And what struck me now, or then, and I remember now, is my father said, you know, one time the president said, nako, itong si Ninoy, ang galing-galing ng ulo. Magpa-presidente ito, kaya lang malikot pa. That's what he said.
Yes.
So I think, there again, I don't think the president would eliminate somebody he respects who is brilliant enough to become president of the country.
Yes. It's all of the accounts actually discount Marcos as stating something like that. How did you feel? How did you and your family feel after you went into exile in the United States? You didn't speak, but you watched everyone else
we
speak.
watched history unfold. Unfortunately, we were at the raw end of what has happened. I think we were resilient enough to go on with our lives. We had to look for jobs. I had my family, my wife and my 2 kids, 3 years old and 11 months. We just had to go to work. And I'm glad you asked that. Contrary to what some people may think, that we live in luxury and we could just enjoy the riches that my father amassed. Well, unfortunately, there's nothing. So my brothers and I had to go to work. My younger brother, at one point had 3 jobs. I've been fortunate that I could at least support the family with 1 job. I'm still working, by the way.
You are now 64,
64
years
and,
old, right?
And I'll be turning 65 actually this year, August. 66 is where I can enjoy full security benefits in the United States. So that's my retirement there.
How did you feel when you watched each one of your allies, starting of course with Juan Ponce Enrile and then Fidel Ramos, and then over time the people that you had trusted turn their backs? How did it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Maria, and people have asked me that. It's not in our nature to keep that anger and be revengeful. I think we accepted, okay, this is history. This is the cards we are dealt with. Let's go on with our lives.
Right.
And in the end, what is important is, I think, we were simple servicemen. And I think we served our country well at the time that we were there. And I think we can honestly say we've been truthful to our sworn duty.
You never wanted to come back, to reclaim your place in history, to come back into power.
Like I said, it's not the Ver trait to look for power. My father doesn't. Oh, now that you tell me about the triumvirate, it came to my mind. My father, as you know, during the Agraba Commission,
Yes.
before that, 2 years, he was going for 2 years of being chief of staff. he said, if this is enough, I'm going to retire. But the assassination came up, so he didn't.
Yes.
As soon as the Agraba Commission exonerated him, he filed a retirement paper to the president. The president said, refused it. I think, like he said, another 2 years before you retire. December of 1985, he again submitted his resignation. At that time, of course, my father was just tired of being vilified. So he said, okay, all I want is to be maybe a security officer, an intelligence officer. He was head of NISA, I'll just be there, but no longer in uniform. He was at the time 65 years old too.
Yes.
So he filed his retirement. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but 3 days after, the president announced the snap elections.
Yes.
So, again, okay, after the elections.
Yes.
But EDSA
Happened.
came, and that retirement never happened.
Irwin, when you were talking about serving during your time, you became emotional. Your eyes started to tear a little bit now. Why?
Well, I felt, that's what I felt when I was there. That we're no different from the people at EDSA. We thought, as soldiers then, that we were protecting the sovereignty of the country. That was our sworn duty. We wanted to defend the Constitution and all that. We wanted to make sure that the president can continue serving, and it feels hard to accept that suddenly we became the villains, that we seem to be butchers, and that we cared no less about the country, but we were there. And I think at that particular moment when I was talking, I remember after we were bombed by the helicopters.
Yes.
As I've said, I was the commander of the guards.
Yes.
I had 36 posts around the presidential palace. I visited each of them, each of the guards. And this speech I gave to them was, okay, because they were all worried. Sir, when are we going to fire back? Are we going to be shot first before we can fire back? I said, no, we don't have the order to fire back yet, but you will wait for my command to do so, I said. And I gave them a speech where, hey, we are prepared to defend this place for 6 months. We can be here for 6 months.
Yes.
And at that moment when I was talking, I remember these soldiers.
Yes.
And I felt they were just waiting for me to say something that could relieve them of the tension of that. Because they were, in their own way, they thought that by standing ground there, they were serving the country. They were laying their lives